I can also see that this is live on Facebook. Also, this is also available for people to look or watch after this engagement. Thank you very much for that. I'll be sharing my slide now, and please confirm if you can see my slide. Can you confirm that you can see my slide at the moment?
Yes, sir, I can see. Every other person to please can comment to be sure that we are all seeing the slide. But as for me, I can see the slide. Sir.
Yes, I can see your slide.
All right.
Yes, I can see your slide.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that response. Value has reached out and has asked me to just do a little knowledge sharing about safety control measures, and we'll also be relating this to the workplace and to our home. The objective will be to introduce us to understanding hazard and risk, also show some level of relationship between hazard and risk, analyze the various control points within the circle of accident, which I'll be sharing with us this afternoon. Then understanding the better points of control and aid better communication of control measures. That's between we the professional and relating to those who need this information. My experience also in the field sometimes had made us to come with strategic ways of sharing this information. All the grammars we learned in the bush and all of those sometimes are not really understood when you are talking to guys on the field. I also know that it's important for them to understand this concept, for them to be able to apply it accordingly. So we'll be sharing this knowledge, and added to, for the professionals in the room this afternoon, added to the knowledge you have, is also present to you a perhaps simpler way to sharing this knowledge. And for those who are not in the core safety field, it's bringing you up to speed to what is necessary to be understood in terms of control measure. So I'll start with why safety control measure. Why are we talking about measure? Why is it a thing of discussion? And I will start by saying that we need to understand that accidents happen. Accidents happen. And what this also means is that to a large extent and some understanding that accidents are a series of actions or inactions. What this means is, as a safety professional, we understand that accident is not necessarily a sudden occurrence. It would be a result of series of our actions and inactions. And like a domino game, it said that little ignorance and negligence set in motion an unpleasant incident. What this means is like the picture on the slide saying, if you have a pack of cards and you've arranged them in such a way that if one falls, it falls on the next card. And no matter how long the card is, you're making the first to fall and it's falling it so that it can fall on the next. That motion keeps going until the last card drops down. And safety control measure is now, like the picture you're seeing, a way to interrupt that flow of force. And that's why we say that our actions, it in a way bring up, or our actions is what helps to ensure that this continuous flow is prevented. And it's also been said that two major factors causes accidents. And it's basically ignorance and negligence. Other factors can be a part of this, but to a large extent, it's been seen from data that ignorance and negligence, and ignorance in simple language means when you don't know. Negligence in a part of other form would mean you know, but you feel it's not necessary to do. So this two factors are so great to influencing or to causing or to causing accidents in the workplace. And I'll quickly go into what is called hazard. For the expert in this field, this is not new. In fact, this is as close to us as understood to us as oxygen. But to those who are don't have that well-grounded knowledge in health and safety, hazard to us is anything that has potential to cause harm. And when we mean anything in the context of anything. As long as a hazard has that potential to cause harm, or as long as anything has potential to cause harm, it's passes to be called a hazard. And unfortunately, hazard is not defined by our perception, it's defined by its potential. What that means is either I feel that this will not cause harm, will not define what a hazard is. Hazard is basically defined by its potential to cause harm. And in that definition of state, hazard is anything that can cause harm. That will also mean, or it also states that hazard is not necessarily defined, it's not a thing that perhaps has caused harm before, or it's causing harm. It's not just limited to those two definitions. It also means that it might never have caused harm before, but we know it has potential. It has inherent ability to cause harm. Am I audible enough? Can you hear me clearly, please?
Yes, sir, clearly.
All right, thank you. So hazard, like I said, it's not defined by my perception, it's defined by its potential. So the knowledge of this potential is very necessary and needed to be understood, to be sure that we can actually prevent accidents. So, and in the context of, sorry?
What's today now?
Now, photocopy. I think someone has not muted this. Just continue. I would coordinate that.
All right. And like I did mention that hazard is defined by its potential, not by my perception, not by what I think, not by what I feel, not by what I'm accepting. That is the context of what hazard is. And at the level of professionalism, at some levels that it has been categorized or defined or classified based on their effect. So we have physical hazard, we have biological hazard, we have chemical hazard, we have ergonomics that talks about work and man relationship, we have safety hazard and psychological hazard. There are so many texts or articles or bodies that define or group this hazard in their own way. But what's more important for us is to understand that anything that has potential to cause harm passes to be a hazard. And that also quickly brings me to a very popular question, or a question I often get in classrooms or engagement with people. Is there any difference, or is hazard also risk? And then the truth is, many people confuse hazard and risk. But to understanding and to appreciating control measure, there must be a clear-cut difference and understanding between these two words. And I'll also quickly bring us or discuss with us what a risk is. Now, in also simple terms, risk is the chance of harm being caused. Don't forget, we have clearly talked about hazard as anything that has potential to cause harm. Anything that has potential to cause harm is a hazard. Now, risk would now be the chance that that harm will be caused. Risk would not be the chance that the harm will be passed on, because we have said the hazard is what has potential to cause harm. And in terms of risk, at some higher advanced discussion, we say risk is defined by the likelihood and severity, meaning the chance of it occurring, and when it occurs, what will be the effect, what will be the consequence. So risk is the likelihood, risk is the severity, meaning the consequence should it happen. So risk also is looked at perhaps in two lights. One is, would it happen? Another would be, if it should happen, what would be the effect? And this is what we talk about when we discuss risk. Remember, our focus is actually control measures, but we cannot talk about control measure if we don't understand what we want to control. And I started by saying also that accidents happen. Accidents happen. Not because someone wakes up in the morning and says, this morning I want to have an accident. In fact, if there's anyone that says that, it moves from being an accident to suicide. Okay, so it's a different person entirely. But we need to understand that accidents happen. They also made it clear that it's almost always as a result of our actions and our inactions, meaning what we do and what we don't do. And we've also established the fact that there are two things that most often causes this accident, two factors. And I talked about ignorance and negligence. Ignorance in the sense that, yes, I don't know. And the truth is sometimes people don't know. And also is negligence. Negligence is saying, yes, I do know. And I can tell you for a fact that sometimes when I need to work with something, and I'm aware that in that thing we have people who are so-called professionals, people who have spent time, years working, people who have the experience, perhaps chief engineer, perhaps project manager. In that sense, they are one of my biggest concerns, because those guys can tell you and prove to you how they've done the wrong thing over and over again, right? And the truth is that you're doing the wrong thing over and over will not make it right. They're just looking for the right time for something bad to happen. So that's about negligence. And also sometimes when you have done something the wrong way and it seems to have given you the desired result, you want to believe that is the normal way. And philosophy once defined all right as all hard right. So I'll quickly bring that into the safety, saying that sometimes because you have done something in an unsafe way and it gave you the desired result, because of negligence, you want to define that as the normal way or the better way. But we know that they are doing the wrong thing over and over again would not make it right. So I then want to talk about hazard as anything that has potential to cause harm, and anything simply means anything. And I also made it clear that hazard is not defined by my perception, it's defined by potential. Okay, so if I see water on the floor and I think by my perception I will not fall, but that water has the potential, has the ability to make me fall should I slip over the water. Okay, so hazard is defined not by my perception, but by its potential. And that's why it's very important for us to understand or identify the potential of that. Then that brought me to the next word called risk. And I did mention that most times there is this confusion between hazard and risk. Are they the same thing? Don't they mean the same thing? Don't they give the same result? But we're also making it clear that risk is the chance that harm would be caused. Risk is the chance that something bad would happen. And risk is defined in the light of likelihood and severity, meaning would it happen? Meaning if it happened, what would be the consequence? Okay, and that makes me just bring it home, saying butter in raw chicken is a hazard, right? That's why you cannot just consume raw chicken. But if that raw chicken is less like that, nothing goes wrong. But now when you now eat or cook chicken, that's when you have now been exposed to the risk and something can go wrong. I will in a very short while present us what I have over my years of work called the accident circle. But before then, professionals over the years come up with what we call hierarchy of control. Remember our focal point, our focus not only control measure, but it's also important for us to have this conversation even before we discuss control measure. And we have what we call hierarchy of control, and I'll just run through them. I'll come back later to explain better. We have elimination, meaning physically removing the hazard. We have substitution, replacing the hazard. We have engineering control, isolate people from hazard. We have change the way people work, administrative control. Then the last line of defense is what we call the personal protective equipment. For those who are in the field, this is what we know clearly, as we know it as much as we know our name. Okay, so but we also want to see how we can make this better understood by everyone. And like the pyramid, like the inverted pyramid, it also shows that the one at the topmost seems to be the most effective, while the one at the least is our last line of defense, the last resort. And in UK, there was an analysis done about home safety, and it's found that most accidents at home, 54% are caused by human factors. Then about 25% is caused by wet and slippery surfaces. About 16% is caused by housekeeping issue, poor housekeeping. Then 1% is poor lighting, 2% by stairs, and 2% by ladder. When I saw this, I was tempted to review the data, but I've not done that research, so I don't have the power to review this, because for me, poor lighting will have a higher percentage in our own class, and I'm sure for obvious reasons, right? So, but this shows that, and for discussion's sake, that human factors have a great level of factor in determining home accidents. And that's why I also did mention that ignorance and negligence are one of the two major factors that cause accidents, right? So now let me introduce us to what I have called the accident circle. You need to understand that before an accident can happen, there must have been a hazard. Okay, in simple terms, accident will not be discussed if there is nothing that has potential to cause the accident or to cause harm. So what that means is, if we are discussing accident, or we are going to be talking about accident, we also need to quickly identify that thing, anything that has potential to cause harm. And like we have earlier discussed, that is called a hazard. And like what I've also come up with personally, I say, until we spot it, we can't stop it. Until we spot the hazard, we can't stop the accident. So in accident prevention, in talking about control measure, in discussing how well to ensure that there are no accidents in our home, one of our first duties, which also is the first thing in our for the state professional here to understand this better, in our risk assessment process, is to identify the hazard, is to spot the hazard. So if we don't spot the hazard, or if we have not spotted the hazard, it might be challenging and difficult to stop the accident. So the stopping or prevention of accident starts by our ability to be able to spot or identify the hazard. I remember I did mention that hazard is not defined by my perception, is defined by its potential. What that also means would be that to prevent an accident, I'm not only spotting by what I feel can cause harm, I am spotting, I'm identifying, I'm looking out for based on those things I know has the ability, has the potential to cause a harm. So remember always that until we spot it, we can't stop it. Until we spot it, we can't stop it. And remember, we have established that accidents happen. Accidents happen. So to prevent those accidents from happening, we also need to improve or make better our ability to identify this hazard. Okay, so remember, we have established, or we are discussing, or I'm sharing with you, that for accident to happen, there must be a hazard. Next to that is, there won't be a discussion still around accident, even although we have the hazard available. If there is no victim, if we don't have the person or property who will be the victim of the arm carried or possessed by the hazard. So accident, we say, would be of a thing of discussion if the hazard that we have identified and there's someone that has or that would be the victim of or the eventual carrier of the harm that hazard has. And I say this when I have the opportunity to say, or when I'm in any engagement or dealing with people, that first, the hazard seems to be the custodian of the harm. Okay, he has the harm, waiting for someone to pass the harm on to. All right, so the accident starts to then quickly identify who will be the next carrier of this arm. And unfortunately, hazard carry the arm on us unaffected, but if this arm is passed on to the next victim or to the victim, then something terrible will happen. So that's where we now say an accident had happened. But even at that, with the presence of this victim or would-be victim, if there's no interaction, if there's no contact, accident still would not be what we'll be discussing, because accident will not happen. So for an accident to happen, there must be, like we did mention first, the hazard. All right. There must be there the person that will carry the arm that the hazard over the time has carried or has possessed. Remember, I have said hazard is anything that has potential to cause harm. So there must be that would be victim. Yes, with the presence of this would be victim, if there's no interaction, then accident will still not happen. Okay, so example, the hazard can be water on the floor, right? The would-be victim can be myself, water in my room. Now, accident will not happen except I go meet the water or the water flows to me. And when it flows to me, I step on the water, I slip and I fall, and accident happens. Okay, so accident will not happen except there's that interaction, except there's that coming together. Now, I have also, to make it easier to understand an action, I've called it risk. Okay, so now the first one is that for the accident to happen, there must be the hazard, there must be the person, and there must be that interaction between them. So now, come back to our point of discussion, which is control measure. So put the right control measure in place, we need to determine this interaction, this manner of interaction. If that manner of interaction is not clearly understood, we might not be given the adequate control measure. If the level of interaction is not understood, we might not be given the adequate control measure. All right. And our focus will not be on the hazard, but on the risk. Example. Now, I started in Lagos, and I don't believe there are people connecting from beyond Lagos. It will be a thing that will not get our attention or my attention if you say that if you live in Lagos, beware of lion attack, physical lion attack. I will not take that information seriously, because I know that there is little or no, there is Perhaps the only time I've heard that there is lion in Lagos was when it was in a foreigner's house, and it was a cop, and he was taken out of the guy was arrested. So I don't expect to see lion on the streets of Oshodi. Right. Okay. So, but if also, and now get another information that says if a beware of mosquito or malaria or mosquito bite, I'll take that seriously. You and I know that if there are two rooms, a room A and a room B, and room A has 3 female lions, that's lionesses, and also in that room there's a 30 million naira in that room. And please, you need to know that it is the female lion that actually attack that on, not necessarily the male lion. And in room B, I have 3 female mosquitoes, and you need to also know that the female mosquito actually causes malaria. I have 3 female mosquitoes, and I have 30,000 naira in that room B. And an instruction comes, say, enter any room, stay there for 30 minutes, whatever is in there is your own. I want to guess in my head that everyone will gladly opt, if I must enter any room, really, if I must, anyone will gladly opt for the room of mosquito, right? Because we know that lion is dangerous, right? Lion can cause more harm, okay? But also need to understand that from data, mosquito has killed more human beings than lions. The reason is because there is more interaction, and that's why even the global bodies spend so much money in malaria prevention, not so much money in lion attack prevention, right? Because we know that the interaction for mosquito is more likely than of lion, right? That's also that if lions will invade a whole city and mosquitoes will invade that same city of the same amount, that there will be more casualties. But we know that there is little or less interaction. What that tells me, or what I'm trying to use that to explain, is shifting our focus not necessarily on the hazard, but taking our focus now on the risk, because that seems like that is what is more important, right? I'm not trying to make less the potency, how dangerous hazard can be, but I'm saying that focusing on hazard and not the risk, meaning the interaction, will not make us have or put the best or better control measure. So, having identified the hazard and also understand the interaction, right? The interaction, then that can now also help us to put a better control measure, right? And I also now say there are 3 points of control. You can actually control at the point of the hazard. Can I get a confirmation that I'm still on this call, please?
Go ahead, sir. We are following you, sir.
Thank you very much. So we can put control on about 3 points. First point will be control at the point of hazard. Okay. Remember, we have said that until we spot it, until we spot the hazard, we can't stop the accident. So when we have identified the hazard, we can only put control at that point by example, eliminate the hazard. If the water is not on the floor, there's no decision about me sleeping from wet floor. Okay, so eliminate the hazard, remove the hazard, get rid of the hazard, substitute the hazard. So we can actually control at that first point. Okay, but I can also tell you from work experience that sometimes we cannot really do so much on the hazard. In fact, sometimes hazard is the job itself. Sometimes we need to work with the hazard. Okay, sometimes that is the work. You can't say, for example, that airplane should not fly because it's so dangerous, right? That would not take us, that would take even more time. That would take, this will take more time to be achieved, right? So sometimes you can't actually do so much at the point of hazard. Then the next point of control can be on the person, right? So, but I'm not saying this in hierarchy. I'm just trying to put our attention to the point of control. So you can put control on the person. Remember, we have said that yes, if the hazard is available, but if that person that would be victim is not there, then there's no discussion about hazard. Okay, so hazard can also put control measure at the point of the person, the would-be victim, and that's why controls like training, controls like knowledge information, controls like administrative staff measure, controls like which are the last one of defense, personal protective equipment are also made available, right? And the third point of control is at the level of interaction, which sometimes seems to be the most effective, not sometimes means would be the most suitable. Normally I've said the most effective is when you take out the hazard, right? It's the most effective, but it might not be the most stable for all situations, right? So left control can be at the point of interaction, meaning is there a way that why the hazard and the person, why we have these two available, can we put a control in how they interact, right? And that's why we have engineering control, meaning put a restriction, meaning have a way or a system whereby these two do not meet, and if they must meet, it's under control and scrutiny. So like I did mention, you can put control at the point of the hazard, put control at the point of the person, or put control at the point of interaction. I want us to think and look at or start picturing our mind. So let's start from things that cause accident. Or can you do me a favor? Try and imagine accident that you have seen, experienced, or you've heard about. Then quickly break or dissect this accident. Say, what is that hazard? What is that thing that has the potential to cause harm, then eventually cause the harm? Then quickly also imagine that would be easy to do. Who was the victim of that accident? Then imagine what brought them together. How did they come in contact? What was the form of interaction between these two? Now, also quickly now imagine the control you would have put or suggested to prevent this occurrence. So the point is, in this what I have called the accident circle, you can quickly break down either accident that happened or accident that would happen. You can break them down and look at what point should be my best control. Like I said, can be control at the point of hazard, control at the point of risk, or control at the point of the would-be victim. This I've tried to break down to the simplest level. Is perhaps the principle for what we in the field call risk assessment, right? And that's why also we don't do what we call hazard assessment. What we do is hazard identification, risk assessment. Why we don't do another hazard assessment in the context of risk assessment is because we are not even bothered about how dangerous the hazard is. What we want to establish is this hazard is dangerous. And like I said, lion, mosquito, put them side by side, you know which one is more dangerous. But you can also tell from data that mosquito has killed more people. So our focus is not trying to dissect how dangerous, how toxic, how harmful this hazard is. Yes, I know at some discussion, at some higher level of discussion, this is also very important because this can also tell how much harm can be caused. But we're saying at the foundational, at the simplest level, let's even just accept that this can cause a harm. Right. So, and having gotten that understanding, then we'll now say, let's do a risk assessment. Risk assessment, like I define with, say there are two sides of it, the likelihood and the severity of consequence. We are assessing this to say, so let's take a little time to look at this hazard coming in contact with the would-be victim. So we're doing a risk assessment. So this seems, or this is the simplest explanation that can be given to those who are not really on this field and those who have not done so much training. Like I'm sure, like I'm aware, I can see some persons in this course who, for me, are also very great, important people I look up to. One of such is Isaac Ojo, who is also in this course. For someone like him, these are the basics. But I'm saying for people who are not really on this, who have not gone so deep into this discussion, this seems to be the simplest form of how to prevent an accident, right? And we have established that for that accident to happen, this circle must be completed. Hazard available, person available, then they meet. Then that's where we can be discussing an incident. And I said incident because either it leads to a harm or almost less than a harm. This circle must be completed. And also, this then says that control of any of these points, like the domino game I did mention, will be an interjection, will be an interruption on the flow that causes the accident. Remember, I also shared that my own opinion and understanding and knowledge over the years, that accident is not necessarily a sudden occurrence. It's as a result of our action and inaction. And if this action and inaction are interjected or are looked into, then over time we can prevent accidents from happening. So round off my discussion, I want us to quickly look at this simple scenario, and I'm bringing it home now. And I would like anyone who is willing to unmute himself and say, look at this picture, a baby at a step. This is an accident waiting to happen. Can you identify what the hazard is? Can you identify who the would-be victim is? Can you also identify what is the risk? And can we share what will be the best control measure? If I'm allowed by Waliu, I would like to take this discussion with everyone. Can we just do a quick assessment together? Anyone who is willing on this call, please.
Yes, you can go ahead, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Waliu, for this. So, who is willing to share with us what you think this is?
I think I can also contribute, right?
Yeah, you can, please.
Yeah, what I'm seeing here, I'm seeing a fall hazard here.
Okay.
Like the baby is going to fall down the stairs, which can cause serious injury
to
the boy. Yeah. So that is one.
Correct. Thank you very much for that. All right. Do I have another person who is willing to share? Okay. In the absence of that, I'll just quickly round off so that we can save our time. I've spent about 15 minutes now. So looking at this picture, like Mr. Waliu did mention, you can see a baby who is about to fall. So the baby is there and it might fall off, and then the stair is there that will be the medium of him falling. Now, what do we need to do? The control would be either remove the stair or remove the baby, or put a barricade between the baby and the stair, and that's what this means. Hazard level will be the stair, the person victim will be the baby, the interaction will be the baby crawling towards the stair. So control at the point of hazard will be remove the stair, which seems to be not practicable really, right? Or remove the baby, which also might not be well acceptable. Or put a barricade or a guard between the baby and the stair. Well, I will not mention names. One of Nigeria's musicians lost his son because they had a pool in the house, and perhaps there was no adequate risk assessment done. And it was all over the social media what went wrong. So we'll say in our home, we need to also be able to do this quick accident circle breakdown, let's identify all things that by their potency can cause harm. I'm not saying by our perception, because sometimes you might say nothing they happen, this cannot go wrong. Even the guy that said nothing they happen came back to tell us something they happened when something happened to him. Right. So if they cannot afford to say this cannot cause harm, this we cannot cause harm. Right. So not by our perception, by the potential or by what the ability it has. Okay. Then also look at those who might be affected if this harm is transferred. Then lastly, how will that interaction happen? What will cause that contact? When we have this understanding, we can now say, at what point can I put the best control? In conclusion, I will say best control are the ones that do not depend on people. What this means is when we are looking at control measures, the best ones are the ones that will not require or that will not necessarily depend on people's action. Because at some level of joy also, we talk about people's behavior. In fact, on my LinkedIn, the last article I posted is about people's behavior, behavior-based safety. And for those who have can check that up, you don't want to make your control to depend on people's action, because I might decide not to do it. Right? I mean, imagine telling that baby, hey baby, don't go to the stairs. That control would depend on that baby's understanding, acceptance, and knowledge of that information. So best controls are the ones that do not depend on people. Then control should be understood and applied. Right? I'm also sharing this for those perhaps want to do this at home. You might understand the control, but it must also be understood by those you are asking to practice that control. So there must be that engagement with your children, with your family, friends, with members of the household. Say, this is what can go wrong, this is how it will go wrong, this is what we need to do so that it's not good. It must be understood. Then not just understanding, it must be applied. Not knowing that something can go wrong, but not actually applying it is not a guarantee that it's not good. And lastly, there must be that continuous engagement or use of the control to guarantee safety. And I hope with this 43-minute discussion, I've been able to share with us at the simplest, easiest level how control measure is key in our offices and our home. Thank you very much for listening, and thank you very much for your time. All right, I'll hand you over Mr. Waliu. Before I do that, I also like to recognize some, if you allow me, some few persons on this call who are also to me great encourager. I can see Isaac Ojo, I can see Remy Molade. Thank you very much, Sada Mark, for being there for some of us on this good path. Thank you very much, Mr. Waliu. And I hand over back to you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. ADENIJI IFEOLUWA. Wow, I'm really not only impressed. I've learned a lot from you today, and we say a big thank you to you for sharing with us this knowledge sharing session. Quickly, if you have any addition, questions, comments on this beautiful topic, let us raise up our hands. But before I go forward, I would like to make this popular safety quote that one of my friends here, one of my colleagues here, used to make. Yes, our colleague in the field. He used to say something every time. He says this every day after the general bus stop. He will say, the son of an hazardous worker, the son of a hazardous worker is the potential. The wife of an hazardous worker is the potential widow. Yes. He will say the wife of a hazardous worker is the potential widow. Meaning that if a wife is sitting down at home and is not telling his husband that, please, when you get to work, follow the safety procedure, he is a widow in the making. I now added my own and I said, okay, let's talk about the children. The son or the daughter of a hazardous worker is a potential orphan. So if we don't want to make our children orphans, we don't want to make our wives widows at an early stage, let's try as much as possible to follow the safety regulations, the safety rules. So with that, if you have any question, please comment, addition, subtraction, let us please signify. Someone raised up his hand the other time, and the person has dropped his hand. Mr. Abraham Oluga, I think you are still here. If you still have a question, kindly unmute and come up with your suggestion or addition or question. Thank you very much. Mr. Abraham Oluga, any question? Okay. Quickly, we will appreciate the presence of Mr. Dapomalade, the CEO of Hybrid. We appreciate the presence, sir. Please, if you permit us within a few seconds, we discuss about control measures, and I know you have a lot of things to say to us, but we want you to just give us your part of your daily safety advice that you used to have for us on these safety topics and safety generally. I hope we are permitted to call you, sir, to give us these 1 or 2 seconds of your safety advice to us. Kindly unmute yourself, sir.
Okay, good afternoon, gentlemen, ladies, and colleagues and professionals. Thank you so much for another beautiful session. Thank you so much to IFE for that safety 101. I think that is actually 101. It's as simple as it can get. I'm not sure it could have been simpler. So it makes it look so cheap to be able to become a safe person, really, if you are able to understand the angles from where he has taken that teaching from. So thank you so much for that, that very simple explanation for us to understand a complex subject in the health and safety system. And to Waliu and the rest of the crew making this happen, I think is very laudable. And knowledge sharing is a constant index that we must all be doing at all times, because it can never get too much. It can never learn too much. We need to continue to learn. I think what I just want to advise very strongly is that I was listening to Waliona in his roundup, and he was talking about consequences of what can happen to anybody that is working in an unsafe way. I think it's actually high time we started asking a lot of us professionals here to also consider what our families are saying. A typical example would be to start asking Mr. Ife here that if I get home to ask your wife some questions about your home, am I going to get the feel of what I've just received from you right now? It may not be impossible that some of us, our family, don't even know what we do. They just know that we bring money home, and we are the breadwinners. We are the one that contribute to their survival when it comes to money. But they don't understand that in that place, all you do is teach people and possibly brainwash them to remain safe. But at home, maybe you are not doing the same. So when we ask them some question, will they be able to tell us the same thing as what we see you out for? If I see Waliu at workplace, I have no doubt he's a safety person. If I go to Waliu's family and brother right now, and interestingly, I know one of his brothers, and I ask him, who is Waliu? Will he possibly say something different from what I know him as? Then that makes us Pharisees. That makes us different. That means we're not exactly living out what we're doing, because from my own little knowledge, what we do speaks more than what we say. People read what you do more. And if there is a gap between what you are saying and what you are doing, the natural curve that everybody be able or do is to do what you are doing and not what you are saying. So it's important for us to have that in our mind, so that as we continue to do our job, making everybody around us safe, we need to make sure that even at the home front as well, this safety is cascaded. We don't want to lose our families. Nobody's going to be happy when you lose your wife or lose your son or lose your daughter because of something that they are doing at home while you are there at work working. So I think we need to actually internalize this more. And I want to challenge everyone of us here to make this more robust. for example, the presentation today, as simple as it is, I think even if you present this to my own child, my son, my daughter, there will not be a problem for them to be able to understand this, you know. So we can take this home and just make it a safety moment in your house, and let everybody begin to say, okay, so this is what my brother does, this is what my daddy does outside, and then eventually when they are safe at home, it is the beauty of you working where you are working. So that's going to be my big encouragement to all of us here. Let's walk our talk in the workplace, at home, or everywhere we find ourselves. Lastly, thank you so much, Waliu. What you're doing is great. And I think the whole system is happy. And for those who are learning from this platform, definitely you are sowing a good seed. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, sir. We really appreciate that. In fact, it also summarizes everything that has been said since morning. It's not only about preaching, it's about emulating or doing what you preach. Like my guy said, he said, people don't emulate what you say, they emulate what you do. In as much as we are spreading the safety gospel, we are telling people to be safety conscious. At the same time, we should also practice it individually so that people will emulate us as good examples. One of those lessons that we learned also today is Mr. IFEOLUWA ADENIJI mentioned a very good quote. He said, until you spot it, you can't stop it. Meaning that you have to spot